So if you've been watching the new series Shogun, then without spoiling anything, I'll just say the biggest battle takes place off screen. And that is the Battle of Sekigahara. And there was a few reasons stated for that. One of the reasons they gave was just to preserve James Clavell's original vision. And this is because the novel didn't show the battle either. Another reason was just simply that Japanese audiences already know all about the battle. And because of that, it would just be pointless to show it. But what I think it all comes down to is simply just the budget. And if you compare this show to other medieval shows like Game of Thrones, they really sparingly used it in the beginning, mostly just for the action. But then when the show proved to be a hit, it was then that HBO decided to open up its wallet. And that resulted in some of the biggest battle sequences ever seen. And as more of a one-season experiment, at least as of now, Shogun really doesn't have access to that kind of money. So a lot of us just felt like something was missing at the end. And of course, some people were fine with it. They compared it more so to the novel, which also didn't have the battle. But I know for a fact if they dedicated even half an episode to that battle, it would have been a lot more satisfying. Again, not everyone agrees, but still. But luckily, the Battle of Sekigahara has been told across a handful of different media. Games, manga, movies. But we'll take a look at the most famous one, and it's titled Sekigahara and released in 2017. So before I get into it, I was given Sekigahara by SamuraiDVD.com for purpose of review. And this store is just the biggest and best selection of samurai films anywhere. And many are just rare that you won't find anywhere else. As an added bonus, you could also use the discount code BUSHIDOBLUES at checkout. So, Sekigahara was directed by Masato Harada. You may recognize him as Omura from The Last Samurai. He was a great villain in that, he had that evil mustache. But he also directed Buragaki Unbroken Samurai, which is a newer film. And that film had some of the best samurai battle scenes I've ever seen. So Harada is definitely getting up there. He's got himself quite the filmography. What's also interesting is this film is based on a novel from 1966. So that also means that this is historical fiction. It's similar to Kurosawa's Kagemusha. Some things are historical, but other things are just added to make it more exciting. So again, you won't find everything historically accurate in this film, so we're gonna judge it more so on story and characters. We will see some historical characters like Ishida Mitsunari, but you'll notice that he's the protagonist in this. Usually Ishida is seen as the villain. And his motives in this for winning the battle have more so to do with justice. You know, good motivations. But it leaves out the negative motivations that his historical character actually had. You know, more so the greedy side. So they're really playing him up to be the character that you're rooting for. And you do end up rooting for him. And I found it kind of weird that I was cheering more so for Ishida instead of Tokugawa Ieyasu. And if you've seen the series Shogun, Tokugawa, who's named Toranaga in that, he's the protagonist. Where Ishida, and his name in that is Ishido, is the villain. And Toranaga in that was just seen as this all-knowing and just clever warlord. Everything he did was calculating. But in this film, Tokugawa is seen as borderline insane. One moment he's threatening to kill everyone, and the next he's just hysterically laughing. He definitely was an interesting character. I did like how he was portrayed in this though. He was accurately shown to have gained weight at this point in his life. And also just one of my favorite Japanese actors plays him, Koji Yakusho. He's just excellent in everything he does. I've been reviewing a few of his films lately. And I'll say here, he really does embody Tokugawa. And this may be controversial, but I believe he plays a better Tokugawa than Hiroyuki Sanada. But what's pretty interesting is the actor who played Ishido in Shogun. He's also on this film, and he plays Shima Sakan. This was Ishida's bravest general. And I'm really starting to like this actor. He just has such a great villain face. You could call it a resting bad guy face. But I just found him brilliant in Shogun, and he's great in this too. He looks like a total badass. And I also just have to mention Junichi Akado. He plays Ishida in this film. And this is another brilliant actor. And he was also the star in Baragaki Unbroken Samurai. And I really liked him in that one too. Here he's really just able to bring this likability to Mitsunari Ishida. And it really brought a uniqueness to this retelling. And because he's more so the protagonist, it really makes it a tragedy. So the acting is definitely top notch. Next is equally as important, and that's the action. And the battle scenes really don't disappoint in this film, but you first have to get to them. The first half does surprisingly lack any action. It is mostly dialogue, and I'll say you're pretty much lost if you really don't know anything about this time period. I'm assuming most of my audience does, but for most Western viewers, they're just not gonna get it. And it was obvious that this film was intended for Japanese audiences, so it is a shame that they didn't at least explain a little bit more of the backstory. But the film is already 2.5 hours long, so I don't know how much more they could tell. And also Kagemusha 2 was similar in that it just assumed that you already knew the history. Also a very long film. But the battle scenes are epic in this. They also have this sense of chaoticness that you would get on the battlefield. You just see cannonballs exploding in the backgrounds. It's pretty impressive how close they get to some of the actors. I'm not sure how they do that. But it really gives you this sense that this was a major event. The Battle of Sekigahara is often compared to the Battle of Gettysburg, which we have in the States. Both eventually brought about a great change to the way the country would be governed. In Japan's case, it would bring about over 250 years of peace. Of course, not everything is handled well in the film, and there is historical inaccuracies. From what I've read, it is unknown if cannons were actually used on the battle, and it's a bit much that this movie just has an abundance of them, and some of the weapon choices they show were just strange. But those are really just nitpicks. But what really just took me out of the film was the ninja. It just seemed odd how serious the movie was, and then out of nowhere, ninjas are just doing backflips and fighting like it was a video game. At one point, the girl ninja is just hit in the head with a sword, and then she's stabbed too, and she's fine. It is kind of funny, but it really just took me out of the experience, because everything else is pretty serious. And I really just find most ninja stuff in films like this to be just too unrealistic. I almost cringe every time I see a depiction of ninja. They're always just the stereotypical ones. So if this film removed the ninja stuff, it would have been a lot better. Anyway, I gotta say, Sekigahara is an impressive film, and it really could have been a masterpiece if the director just had more time on his hands. I believe this would have been a lot better as a trilogy. Instead, the film just assumes you already know the Japanese history and backstory, and it ultimately just alienates a lot of its audience. Still, I believe you could get a satisfying conclusion out of this, especially if you've seen Shogun and you're a little unsatisfied with how it ended. Just be sure to read some of the history before watching it. So again, this is the film with the battle scene we never got. But you never know, they might follow up the series with a second season or a movie. That would be great. Who knows? Anyway, this film is only available on SamuraiDVD.com. You could use the discount code BushidoBlues at checkout. Get yourself a nice discount. And if you want to support the channel, you could subscribe, leave a thumbs up, share. And if you want to just help keep the channel afloat, I do have a Patreon, and you can support the channel that way. There's a link in the description. Anyway, thanks for watching.